Welcome back to this edition of Drunk Bible Study, bonus edition. Here we are again.
Gotta sandwich it with the additions.
Yeah, exactly. So many additions, so many bonuses. This was a really interesting set of chapters that we did in 2 Kings today. I was surprised because it kind of went all over the place. Like, there were various things that sort of led into one another, and then it ended up being like a bunch of like random scattershot like things that happened, and that was it. It was very strange.
Do you remember last week the sort of teaser that I gave you for this episode?
No. What did you say?
Yes, your teaser was about somebody not doing something being very important, right? Or
it was
not
about
killing
someone not dying, which was the boy.
Meeting the kid?
In this case.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I looked up more about the kid and then also specifically the Shunammite woman.
Okay.
And I found, in my opinion, a really lovely article on myjewishlearning.com from a Rabbi Gedolah Coleman Ruskin. And I think that the perspective is a little bit different than like the normal super Christian perspective that's kind of like putting it all in like a nice little bow and tying it up and saying like, well, it was because of God or whatever. This is a little bit more critical thinking, in my opinion. First of all, okay, so the Shunammite woman is also called Ishah, a great woman. And this says that the consensus of Yes, exactly. But it refers to Gedolah, Gedolah, Gedolah.
Gladiola.
Gedolah, great.
Gedolah, okay.
And that refers to her wealth specifically.
Okay.
So apparently she had the financial means to build an addition to her house.
And that's not nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and so that's not nothing. No small expense in antiquity. But then also this gentleman or person, I'm not quite sure, Gedolah, if that's what type of name that is. But yes, this rabbi, it says that it's also referring to her wisdom, which is cool. I like that word is referring to her wisdom and her capacity for empathy.
I'm finding that Gedolah is a lady's name. Actually.
Okay,
it's a Hebrew girl's name.
Okay. Yes, perfect, lovely. And this whole thing sort of parallels is very similar to the Abraham and Sarah and Isaac story, because there's also the parallel of like hospitality, a prophecy to a barren woman that she will bear a son, and then a near-death experience of that son. So that's something to keep in mind, that we're doing this again in the Bible, because the Bible loves to revisit themes for sure. But the interesting part of this is that this says, and now I discussed specifically last week about the bears, the she-bears.
Yeah.
And this woman, this rabbi, is like, yeah, Elisha was a busy and emotionally inaccessible man of God, which right there is very different than a lot of the different things that we like to read about. Yeah. And it says, in the wake of the death of his mentor Elijah, Elisha's detachment was so great that his quick temper resulted in the tragic death of 42 children who were teasing him.
By bear.
Yeah.
Death by bear.
Exactly. But I like that it's saying like he's just an emotionally detached man, and he killed these kids and whatever. He doesn't even care. And he was thoughtful enough to reward the Shunammite woman for her hospitality, but he didn't do it personally. Instead, he sent his servant Gehazi to offer money and protection, which she politely turned down. Now, in addition, this talks about the fact that he decides to give her like this thing for giving him a room and hospitality and all of that, and that thing is a son. However, she never asks to get this son. She like doesn't say that she wants it specifically.
Huh, interesting. She does say like, no, I'm barren, that's not going to happen.
Exactly. But also, yeah, it's saying like a key difference is that unlike other barren women in the Bible, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Hannah, Samson's mother, and Michal, the Shunammite woman had not been praying for a child, nor did her life seem to be incomplete without
She's
one.
Like, I'm financially independent. I'm doing great.
Exactly. Like, I don't need a kid. It was Elisha's idea for her to become a mother, not hers. So that's a really interesting point that they're talking
about that.
Me neither. Yeah. And so I didn't realize this. I guess the kid like basically died of like heat stroke. He was wandering in the heat a day without water. He became dehydrated, then sick, and ultimately died. That's interesting.
Okay.
Well, I guess that's the interpretation, right?
That's the interpretation. Yeah. I mean, I didn't get any of that from what we read, but whatever. So yeah, she, again, it talks about his emotional detachment that like first he sends his servant to help her out, not even himself. And she's like, nah, man, like, we need you. You have to come and do this thing.
That's when she was like, it's fine. Don't worry about it, servant. Get me the real deal.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then it also talks about the fact that because of her deep empathy for Elisha, the Shunammite woman knew precisely what words to use to shake him from his detachment. As the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. Which this utterance was the precise echo of the impassioned words with which Elisha himself had implored his beloved mentor, Elijah, not to die.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's the same wording that he had said to him. Wow.
Yes.
Okay, that's a cool connection.
I know, and it worked. Elisha and the woman now rushed to the bedside of the child. So, yeah. Anyways,
wow.
He made the kid alive and stuff, and it says he embraced... He breathed child the breath of life, breathed into the child the breath of life, the embrace of life, as he had prophesied. At this season next year, you will be embracing a son. So that's interesting.
Well,
so, yeah.
He prophesies that she would be embracing a son.
I know. Well, yeah.
But then he did say,
you
come in and embrace her after I've resurrected him. So.
And that's the thing. And it says that, yeah. So the incident revived the Shunammite woman and gave her a bond with her son. So the woman bent down. She didn't have one
before.
I don't know. That's what it's saying, essentially.
Shits about what happened to him before.
I mean, clearly she did, but yeah.
She needed a man to teach her how to have a bond with her child.
I mean, sure. I'm not sure. But it's essentially just saying, like, may we all be inspired by the healing power of radical empathy. So both of them,
so say we all. May we all.
Yeah, both of them were empathetic, and they ultimately got what they wanted, I guess. So I thought it was a lovely thing, a lovely article on myjewishlearning.com.
I did find, just briefly, when I was looking stuff up, that we have not seen the last of her. She's going to be back next week.
Wow, what a leading lady.
I know, right?
Leading lady indeed.
Leading lady. Just real quick, while I found one thing by Carol Myers, who wrote a book called Rediscovering Eve, Ancient Israelite Women in Context. And one of the things she points out is that while this character never gets a name, she's one of the few women in the Bible who's not introduced as a wife of somebody else. So that's
true. She's just like her own woman.
And the fact that it's her idea that she notices this is a holy man and that he comes through this town often, so let's build him a room. And her husband says yes. It's sort of like this fairly unique story of her being the one.
She's just controlling the money and maybe wearing the pants.
Noticing things and realizing things.
For ancient Israel.
Yeah. And none of them wore pants, but yeah. So yeah, anyway, we're going to get her next week.
Very cool.
Where she's going to come back again. So that'll be fun.
She's a cool character.
Yeah.
So I looked up stuff all about Gehazi, our boy.
Oh, the servant.
Gehazi.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yes. The servant. Now, so here's the thing, is in rabbinic literature, Gehazi is identified as one of 4 people who essentially have forfeited their share in the afterlife because they were so wicked.
Wow.
What? Wait. What?
In the
According to who? Who put this list?
I'm assuming
the rabbis.
Oh, the rabbis. Okay.
Jewish writing, Jewish mythology.
Have we met some of the other people?
We have not. Well, actually, sorry.
Oh, is he the first?
I lied. One of them is Balaam.
Oh.
And one of them is Doge.
Doge. Doge.
Cool. Yeah. What did Doge do again? Except for
he was a general or something.
Doge was the chief herdsman to Saul.
Okay.
Apparently, he was also an antagonist to David at a certain point.
Right.
And then wicked man.
And then I guess Ahithophel, who was a counselor to David, is the other one. So these four people from around the same time period in history are not gonna not going to get their share in the afterlife, basically.
Yeah. Too bad.
I guess not.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So now this is an interesting part of the story that we didn't really get in this translation. Again, in rabbinic literature, so remember how Elisha told Gehazi, okay, I'm going to give you my staff, go put it on the face of the child, but don't talk to anybody. And if anybody addresses you, don't talk to them.
Right.
Remember, and we never really got a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
In rabbinic literature, Gehazi totally wangs that.
Oh.
Where he is completely...
Chatting up everybody.
Well, it's more that he's completely skeptical about this staff trick doing anything. And so he's asking passersby, like, do you think the staff is going to be able to restore a dead kid to life? So he's also kind of mocking. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. There's also other stories, again, in like Jewish mythology and like rabbinic literature that is just more pointing out the fact that Gehazi is just such a bad boy.
But we really don't see that until the very end of this chapter.
Yeah, I know,
How
until he's suddenly kind of
strange.
shisty at the very end.
Yeah.
So that's the interesting question, right? Is like, is it that there's a whole lot of other context that just got left out of the Bible, or is that people needed a way to explain this, and so they made up a bunch of other stories about why he was a
bad.
schmuck? Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question. He is the subject of a Kipling poem, actually. Called Gehazi, written in 1915. And now this poem's, it's like 5 stanzas. I'm just going to read you one of them because the interpretation is that Kipling was writing this actually about a British politician, a member of parliament at the time.
And he's like, the Gehazi is you.
Basically. So here's
I love it.
Here's a sample stanza for you.
Okay.
Search out and probe, Gehazi, as thou of all canst try, the truthful, well-weighed answer that tells the blacker lie, the loud, uneasy virtue, the anger feigned at will, to overbear a witness and make the court keep still. And it's basically just a lot of that over and over of like, you're a rat.
You're manipulating things and...
Exactly. You're a rat. Now, the last thing I want to share with you is an image, and I will be sharing this in the Drunk Bible Study Fans and Fellowship Facebook group. So if you're listening, go join that group so that you can see this image. This is an etching from the 1800s of Gehazi coming to place the rod on the child's face. So
please show us. Can't
screen
wait.
share this with you. So you kind of have to paint a little bit of a word picture. Is that Gehazi's here?
This kid is. I just want to remind everyone that it said when the kid was an adult. Okay.
Right. This is yet another example of like the kid's grown up enough to run out into the field with his dad and don't fear the reaper.
But this kid looks like he is maybe a toddler.
Right.
Yeah, probably like 4 or so.
Yeah.
And so like Gehazi's just like very gently placing.
It looks like a conductor baton.
Yeah, conductor's
like
baton.
A conductor's baton or like a Harry Potter wand.
Seriously.
Just like
it's very thin little
laying
staff.
it
Dragon
on the child's
heart,
head.
14 inches bendy. Like, seriously.
And now there's this interesting thing where it's like he's pulling back the blanket and the kid is buck-ass naked underneath this, like his
that's
junk
weird
is
that he's
flopping out.
Yeah,
so that's weird. It's like the action is I'm also revealing this kid's nakedness as I just tap his little forehead.
That's outrageously strange. You could definitely just like keep the blankie on the kid
right.
and still do the same thing.
Anyway, I will post this picture in the Facebook group for all of your enjoyment.
Yeah, so I did in looking up stuff about the resurrection of the kid. I found not a lot, actually, which was interesting. I expected to find a lot of discussion about it, but it's like there's stuff about Elijah doing such a similar thing before with the other kid, but all the stuff about Elisha was just pointing out the similarities, kind of being like, look, in both cases, it's a woman who offered hospitality to the prophet, right? Just remember before it was that other woman who offered hospitality to Elijah, even though she had nothing. And he did the miracle of like, here's your oil and your flour is going to keep going for a long time. But she also fed him. And in this case, it's a little different where she's a wealthy woman who just decides of her own free will to help him. But similarities are there. They both have sons that die. They both have sons that get resurrected.
But no one out there is like, and just like with Elijah, this is also very weird and uncomfortable. Is anyone pointing that out?
I mean,
so there was I was surprised at how little there was about this. That so much more explicitly explains his mouth was on his mouth and his eyes on his eyes, which is weird.
Now,
and
for a second, I'm like mouth to mouth CPR. Sure, maybe they should have some kind of ancient CPR, but it's like I need to literally be all up in your business. I'm like, that ain't no CPR.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, so I did come across that. The CPR explanation came up, which is interesting because we had kind of theorized that with Elijah. And now with Elisha, it's maybe even a little more clear that they hadn't figured out CPR in the way we know it today, but that maybe that like warming him, compressing on him with your body and blowing into his mouth, maybe.
That was common practice back then.
Maybe, or not common practice. Maybe this was a miracle at the time, but really he just figured out CPR. But I did find one thread on the Hermeneutics Stack Exchange, which of course I love. And the question in that one was, between the time that this boy died and the woman laid him in the room, how much time went by between her going to find the prophet and then coming back?
That's a great question.
So what this person did was, the person who answered it, I was very impressed, but they figured out like where that would have been and where he was and like how long it would take to go there and like how fast a marathon runner could do it and then shave that off a little bit to be like, here's probably realistically.
Gosh.
And essentially between those 2 points, they said that a marathon runner could make that run in about 2 hours. So more realistically, 3. If you're if you're running though.
If you're booking it.
So they're saying that perhaps from the time she got there to when she sent Gehazi, if he ran, which I guess according to Dedeker, maybe he was chatting up people along the way. But if he ran, maybe 3 hours. And then basically doing the calculations of how long it would take her and also how long it would take then Elisha after that, they said maybe 12 hours.
Jeez.
Is approximate.
This
so
kid
also
is
for
super
CPR,
dead.
that's
sorry,
too late.
No way.
Yeah.
It was too late. Like 2 hours, like freaking 12 hours ago. Come on.
Exactly.
What if this was more of an interpretation of like someone's fallen into a coma?
That I know, and that there is that it's like her. You know, maybe they don't have quite the same sense of like when someone's all the way dead.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah. There's a lot of questions, but not a lot of answers to be found on the internet that I found, at least.
I mean, that's the Bible for you.
That's the Bible for you. Last thing is just that God Rimmon that we were talking about, the who was it? The general? Man. That he said, like, I'm going to have to go to the temple and worship Rimmon. When I looked up Rimmon, it's a Syrian god that's only mentioned in this one time, apparently, and that this might just be the Syrian version of Baal. So this might just be Baal again, and that this particular person was just, they just had a different name. You know how it is. As a god, you get bored of one name, you try another one. It's cool.
There you go.
It's cool.
It was fun. Okay.
Wow, we learned a lot of things.
As always.
So I will say that Emily's prediction about Second Kings really being second prophets is going to stay true next week. Because next week is going to be a lot of stuff more about Elisha. So he's really stealing the show, as it were.
Definitely.
I'm really glad that we cast Vin Diesel. He's one of those actors that I've been a big fan of for a long time. On like outside of his acting, even I just think he's a cool guy, and just everything I know about him, love him. So I'm really excited he's going to have a good featured part in these upcoming episodes. I'm glad he's doing
it for you.
Yeah.
Lovely. Alrighty, well, we're gonna continue on with Second Prophets next week, and we hope to see you all there. Looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.
See ya.